talk about armor making and foam smithing. You will see I like to walk around. I don't like to sit on a chair, so don't worry if I walk around. So let's start. Hello, I am Matthias. I'm from Belgium. I'm also a cosplay shop representative. I add this into the panel because you will get some materials later as well, like some foam clay to make some stuff. And of course I have to mention her. I make mostly armor or props, although yesterday you might have seen me like with makeup and with like alone clothing, so I don't only make armor and props, but it's my main focus. I'm an international cosplayer, which means I go from convention to convention to convention, and it's my life. And also, please, if you have a question while I'm like talking, you can put your hand up and I will answer a question immediately. Normally at the end I have like a lot of time to answer questions, but this time I have to rush away because I have prejudging for the contest, which you should go and watch because I think it's going to be amazing. So if you have questions, just put your hand up or contact me later, you can choose. It's a bit slower changing, okay. So Cosplay Materials, you will get some. Cosplay Shop, it's not an advertisement, but Cosplay Shop, it's a store, but we also have an atelier, so if you're ever in Belgium, feel free to jump in. Like, you can work in this place like for free. There are like machines, materials, you can just take it and work on your cosplay. So if you're ever in Belgium, please go there. This slide you can ignore. Table of contents. I will talk about the magic of foam because foam is very magical. It has very specific specifications. I will also talk how to use it in 3 steps that always return. Like, you can make foam as complex as you want, but 3 steps will always return, no matter what you want to make. Complex armor, simple armor, always these 3 steps. Then I will talk about the Dremel. It's a tool. Then we will have some fun with foam clay. You can sculpt something. I will explain about that as well. And then the last part is something very special. It's like painting, because I love to have like a very shiny finish, like very metallic-y. And I will tell you my secret how I do that. So first of all, safety first. It's pretty hard to read, I think, but always wear a respirator if you're going to paint something with cans, please. Because if you don't, you will destroy your lungs, and buying just a respirator is much cheaper than like having treatments to fix your lungs. Of course, paint is not dangerous. We all know we can play around with paint, but I once had like, I drink a lot of tea when I work on my cosplays. And you know where I put my brushes? In water, in a cup. And I wasn't looking, I was crafting, fun, and I drank. And I drank the cup with the paint water. And my brushes were in my tea. Yeah, amazing. So yeah, I'm just saying, like, safety first. You know when you have to have safety equipment. If you use any machines, use safety equipment. Of course, if you're just cutting foam, you don't need a respirator or anything, but keep it in mind. Because, jokes aside, it's very serious. It's not me in the picture, but you see what can happen. Of course, you won't use these tools on foam, but things can always happen unexpectedly. Yeah, like, you don't expect a blade to just break and fly away. You don't expect it, but you have to be prepared for it. Alright, enough of the dark stuff. The magic of foam. Foam is one of the mostly used materials in cosplay. In the past, there was a lot of warbler, but foam has quite overtook warbler and being the favorite material. Why, you might ask? Because first of all, it's cheap. Foam is fairly cheap. Of course, you can go more and more expensive the higher the quality, but in general, it's a cheap material. It's flexible, but it's still strong. So you can flex it, but it won't break. It's also very lightweight. Like, a whole armor weighs nothing. You barely feel you have it on. You need exact patterns, though. You can't just take a piece of foam, cut into the foam and expect an armor like out of nowhere. No, you have to think in front. You really have to think. And the different densities, This is very important because if you shop for foam, you will see like low density, high density, middle density, whatever density. It's indicated to show how strong the foam is. The higher the density, the stronger it will be, but the more difficult it will be to make some shapes with it. So you have to look at that. And I would say, it's a personal tip, if you want to make armor, go for high density. If you want to make organic shapes like bones, a skull, things like that, go for the low density. Now, where do you get this stuff? Of course, I work for the cosplay shop, but you don't have to buy from there. You can get some foam from the hardware store. The problem with this foam is, as you can see, like it's in these floor tiles or yoga mats. The quality is not the best. Your armor will get destroyed very fast, but at least you will have the armor like for a very cheap price. It also can have like a texture, like some texture that's anti-slip. So you have to take all of those things into account. If you want to go for a high quality, you can go to an art or craft store. But the problem with this is an art store has so many supplies, so the price for foam and art stores is like very high. And then in the end, of course, you have the cosplay shop. It's a shop especially designed for cosplay. So the price is very good and the foam is like very high quality. I don't have a sample packet with me, but later you can go downstairs to my booth and I will have a sample packet there and you can just take the foam and play with it. Don't be afraid to break it. So you can just go downstairs, take the sample packet and play around with it. And take in mind again, there will be black foam and there will be grey foam. Black foam is a low density, grey is a high density, and I want you to feel the difference. Of course, you have special foams as well. There are so many types of foams. The first one, LED foam. As the name says, it's the same as foam, but it's shine through. The light can go through it. As you see in the picture, it's Kami Cosplay. She made blades with our LED foam, and you can see when the lights are off, it looks good. But when the lights are on, there's suddenly like light going through a painted prop, which is totally amazing. It's like magic. Disadvantage is it's only for special effects. You can't make a full armor out of it because it's not strong enough. And to paint it, you need some experience. Like you can't just take a brush and paint on it, because if you paint with a brush, you get like these little strokes. I will show you later in the presentation how to not get strokes. But a solution is an airbrush or sponge, because with the sponge you will do like this, you will tap and you won't get the strokes. Then there's the insulation plates. You can find them in your house, in the walls. They are like these thick foam plates, very strong. You also have expansion foam. It's a kind of foam, you have it in cans or two parts, and you spray it. It's very little in the beginning and then it becomes like, whoa, huge. And you have to carve in it, like you have to shave off like all the things. And then you have padding foam as well. It's a squishy foam. You're probably sitting on padding foam right now. And it's very useful for like, if you have an armor and you start to feel like, oh damn, like this is starting to hurt me or this is not comfortable, just add like a little layer of padding foam and you will feel nothing anymore. It's like laying in a bed. It's also useful for helmets. If you make your helmet a little bit too big, just pad it a little bit so it will fit in your head. And then it won't be like a wobbly head, you know. Next foam product is dowels. Now you can say, oh wow, I can just take a sheet of foam, cut out the dowels, no problem. Yeah, you can do that, but have you ever tried to sand something round? I tried many times and always you sand something round and you sand a little bit too much on one side. So to fix this, you sand on the other side and then there is too much and in the end you have like almost nothing left. And balls of course as well, like those are really hard to make out of foam. Example is a chain. Like if you want to make a chain, you don't have to spend a whole day to make one chain. You can just buy it all for a couple of euros and bam, you have instantly a chain. Or even the best example is Blizzard. They just love to add these borders on every armor, like everywhere they can. You can look at any Blizzard armor, they will have these borders. And I think personally it's just easy to buy like a perfect bevel to have like the perfect edge. Like as you can see in the golden armor, like it would be very hard to like cut that out like perfectly, like make not a single mistake, and you spend so much time, while you can just pay €1 to get a pre-cut one. I mean, and to save even more time, but this is already very specific, but I still want to show you it as a tip. Like imagine you make a costume and it has like 3000 scales. Can you imagine cutting every scale by hand? You would be cutting for hours and hours and hours, while you can just buy a bag of pre-cut foam scales, and the price of the pre-cut foam scales is the same as buying a plate of foam. So I mean, you just have to be a little bit creative, like thinking how can I do something in the fastest way. You can spend time on it, of course, if you enjoy that, that's no problem, but if you want to be fast, you can just buy some pre-made things. Yeah, so there's foam scales, foam blocks, spheres, pyramids, even bigger foam blocks, there's all kinds of things. Alright, enough theory now. We'll go on to like how to use the foam. Like I get a lot of messages of people asking like, I want to use foam, but how do I do this? And this and this and this, but there's always 3 things that return. But before I can say what these steps are, we need some tools. And foam smithing, it's not that expensive. Like the tools on the one side, I'm sure you already have, like a knife sharpener, a Sharpie, some glue. On the other hand, there's some machines. They are a bit more expensive, but the return you will get from them, from buying them, is so high. Like you can do so much with it. Okay, so the first step of the 3 is cutting EVA foam. To be honest, it doesn't matter which knife you use. Like you use a scalpel, it's fine. You use a box cutter, it's fine. Not to use a machete, it's fine. As long as it is sharp enough, because if you don't have a sharp blade, you will start like carving into the foam, like sawing, and then the edge won't be smooth. There will be all kinds of little things, and if you want to glue that together, you will have a seam that will open. Especially after quite a while, it will just tear itself open. So use whichever knife you want, as long as it's sharp. And to add on that, you can get a sharpener, like one of those knife sharpeners. Maybe you have it already in your kitchen, and that's what I use. I still have the same knife as like 3 years ago. I just sharpen it every time. I think I broke the blade once, so I replaced it once, but you get the point. And also, like, try to do when you cut, like, try to go in one smooth cut. Because if you start doing this, then you will cut too far into your foam and you won't have a smooth line. If you want to see some videos on how to cut, it's not that hard, but you can go to my friend, he's called Punished Props on YouTube. He has a lot of videos on that. Now, step 2, gluing. This is always interesting as well. To glue, I use contact glue. It's an interesting kind of glue because you don't put glue and you put it together, no. You have to put glue on both sides you want to glue together, and you have to wait like a few minutes before you stick them together. So you put glue one side, glue on the side, wait a few minutes, stick them together. It's good for big surfaces because you can just brush on the glue or use some scrap foam to brush it on. It's the strongest bond ever. Like if it's together, like those pieces will never come loose again. If you do pull, they can come loose, but then it's the foam that rips. It's not the seam that rips. Yeah, but there's no room for mistakes as well. Because when you start gluing, like I said, you can't pull it apart anymore. So if you glue like 1 centimeter or even half a centimeter wrong, everything will be half a centimeter wrong. Like you cannot fix it anymore. Of course, I also use super glue for like little details and good old hot glue as well. I mean, but I wouldn't suggest to use hot glue to put like 2 pieces together. It's more for strength on the inside. And then the third step, and for me actually the most important step, because everyone can glue and cut, there's no difficulty in that, but this tool is a heat gun. It was on the previous slide, and what this tool does is, like the name says, it blows very, very hot air. And for me it's the most important step. And it's best to do this after gluing if you want the strongest bond. But sometimes shapes are very complex, like think about helmets like round shapes. Then you want to heat treat it like with a heat gun before gluing it together. Again, don't use a hairdryer because the hairdryer doesn't get hot enough. And definitely don't put your foam in an oven. You might laugh at it, but that happens actually. Like, I got pictures like of someone put his foam in the oven and he's like, oh, my foam melted. Yeah, of course you put it in an oven. Or even worse, in a microwave. I mean, and do not skip this step. I will show you some examples what this step does. First of all, I'll just add one more there. You can see on the first image, like it's straight. It looks good. It's not a bad armor. It looks good, but it's straight. You look a bit like it's like a bit like a box. Like it's just straight. There's no 3D in it. And then you see, you just heat it up, and with your hands you can just bend the foam in the way you want. Like here, she bend it, and on the bottom you bend it. And when the foam cools down, and this is the interesting thing, it will keep that shape. For example, look at the first image and then the last image. You can see that nice curve. And that's an outwards curve, but you can also do an inwards curve. Like when you make an armor, like most of the time it will be just like this. But our body is not like this. If you want a very elegant armor, your armor should go like this or like this, you know. It should have some kind of definition. And you can even go extreme with this. If you want to make like a ball shape form, like I see people and like they make patterns for it, so they glue like 5 pieces together, then they have 5 seams. No, you can just take foam, press it into a form, and it will stay that form. You see, it's like, it's all about being creative.
But you probably cannot do it with a high density.
No, that's true. That's what I said before as well. The high density is great, but not for organic shapes. This is a more organic shape. That's very true. Good point. So the low density is best to use for this. And now the next one, and that image is very extreme. It's not EVA foam, I have to say, but I just want to show how important heating is. Like on the one side you can see the shapes. You can see how they are defined. Like you can see the breast is like defined, whereas before heat shaping you had like just a seam line, which is like pretty ugly, you know. And again, like this parts as well and everything. And then the other image, like I said, it's not EVA foam, but it shows just the difference heat shaping can do. Like for me, it's so important, heat shaping. It makes or breaks a costume. It's one of those things that makes or breaks a costume. And I also want to give you like a little trick. It's when you like cut into EVA foam. This is high density, and you cut into it. Like don't cut all the way through, but like how do I say, like marks. Like yeah, you know, just on the surface you cut it, and then you heat it. You will see that the lines you cut, they will go open, and you can create some very nice effects with this. Because I see a lot of people who just want to make this kind of rooms, and they use like a wood burner. But the problem with a wood burner is you need to have a very steady hand. From the moment you do this, you will have like all little spots, and that's very bad. And even if you need like thicker lines than that, first carve it with a knife and then go over it with your wood burner instead of going immediately with your wood burner. It's a lot harder.
Can I have a question?
Yes.
How do you make such a wide ornaments? Like if I use a box cutter, it's going to be like very thin line and not going to do these noticeable lines.
Yeah.
So how do I do those?
That's the whole point of heating. Because with a box cutter, like I wish I could show you, like in real, but you score, like you cut a little bit into the surface, and then you heat it. But like not just passing over it, but you want to really heat it. And like there's no difference except the heating on those two images.
So
like,
I can just do straight lines. And
yeah, just if you do a straight line into it, and then with the heat gun, it will literally open up.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. And another thing, I told you use a heat gun, but for this example you can use an iron. If you want to make leather with foam, like you're short on time and you really want to make something that looks like leather, you can just use some aluminium foil and put an iron on top of it. And the texture will go through it and you will have like fake leather. And you can do this with everything. There's like videos online and people who put like rocks on EVA foam and the shape of the rocks are inside it and it looks like a very hammered texture. Now one problem is, watch out if you will use heat on it again. Because if you use heat, like the lines open from the previous slide, but also your foam will get like even again. So you have to experiment a little bit. Yeah, it takes a while. I want to give an example of my costume as well, how I made my Ornstein helmet. Because when you want to make something complex, I see people already panicking, like, oh, how do I do this, how do I do that, how do I do this, like, whoa, whoa, whoa. And they start to go all over the place on the helmet. I'd say just start from the bottom. Start from the bottom. Why from the bottom? Because if you start from the top and you fuck up somewhere along the way, if you have to fix the bottom, it's a lot harder than fixing the top. So I just started with making like a little thing around the neck. These patterns I like freehanded a bit, like I drew the shape onto paper, it's not that hard. And then I put the paper on the mannequin and I saw, okay, the shape is good. Or some fixes, you can fix them on the paper and then cut them out again. I traced them on the foam, glued them together and I was happy with the result. So I had the neck part. Then I added the part in front of the neck. And after that I built like a little roof on the head. Like what I want to show you this is like go step by step. Start by the beginning. Don't even think about the top part yet when you're just building the neck part. Again, you see, you just build piece by piece by piece. On the last slide, the little face, that's 3D printed because I ran out of time. So yeah, if you have a heavy project, start at the beginning, don't panic, just start and see what works. Like, I had failed tries for the top part as well, but it's not that big of a deal because you tried on paper first. So if you lose some paper, it's okay. Like, you're not losing the foam. And not only bit by bit, but everything is in the details as well. Like, I could call it a day. On the first picture, I could call it a day. I would be like, my shape is good, I'm happy with it. Those lines you see in the other picture, I could be like, I just paint them on. I just use some paint them on. It will look great. Yes, it will look okay, but you don't have the 3D effect I was talking about. You really want your armor to pop out, and that's why I added all these little details. And then even more, this is a very extreme example of course, but you could call it a day with the first picture. And I've seen it countless of times in contests and everything. Like they say like, oh, I will just paint on the details. And again, you can do that. You can use colors like to paint on all the little things. But if you just make it in 3D, you see what different it already makes, like without paint. Like, armor has layers, like an onion, and it also makes you cry, so. Like, again, on the first picture, I could say, I call it a day. It's like, it's okay. No one will say anything about it, like, I can just paint on again. No, I went all the way to, like, you can see in the second picture, I had to trace every detail on the foam, cut it out. It took me like a few days to just get it all figured out, but you can see on the last picture again, it's the bottom part, it's the same part. You see how it changed just by adding some details. Like, for me that's like very, very interesting.
What do you use for tracing the ornaments from the foam? When you first trace them on the foam, then you want to make yes, a pattern.
How I made the patterns?
Yes.
Oh, it's very simple. I didn't include it in the panel because it would go too long. But what I do is I put tape on my phone and then I draw on the tape. And then when you take the tape from the phone, you can just put it on the paper, cut it out, and you have your details.
Okay.
Because if you, that's another thing, but that's all about patterning as well. If you already start, like I said, if you in the beginning already start to think about these details, it won't work because the foam has a thickness. So if you make a pattern and you draw the details on that first pattern already, then you make your shape out of foam and you cut out the details and you want to glue them, you will see your details will be a bit too small. Because foam is not like paper, foam has a thickness. So if you try to do that all at once, like I've been there a lot of times because I was lazy. But now I just put some tape on there, take the extra few minutes to draw on the tape, put the tape on the paper, cut it out and trace it. The next part is about the Dremel. Normally I shouldn't talk too much about tools, but the Dremel is kind of a special thing. And I totally love the Dremel. Has anyone heard from a Dremel yet, or a rotation tool? Quite a few actually, that's interesting. For me it's very essential, because you can do anything with it, literally. You can sand with it, you can carve with it, you can mill with it, you can cut with it, like anything you can imagine almost. It's a tool and you see the little head at the front of the Dremel. This part rotates very fast. And you can change the head for other things depending on what you want to do. And a few examples on foam are bevels. If you want to make a bevel onto your foam, you can just sand. It's the easiest effect ever, but a lot of people don't know, they just go like this, you know, they just go crazy on the foam. But actually, if you go from left to right, you will float on the surface and it will get very, very smooth. But the disadvantage is very slow, you don't remove a lot of materials. If you go the other direction, you will carve into the foam. And it's very fast, but you will get a result that's a bit like this. It waves a bit, like it's very hard to have like a very smooth effect. So what I do is, I first carve away the bulk of the material, and then I change my direction to make everything like very smooth. And then most of the times I don't even have to hand sand anything anymore. Amazing for cleanup as well. Like you can be as clean as you want, you will still have some glue stains or seams that are not perfect. Again, you can just take your Dremel and go over those seams or over this glue, and all the dirt will get removed. And it's good for edges, seams, bumps, dirt, you know. You can, it's all about being creative. Like I just give some tips, but it's all about like thinking outside of the box, like how can I use this tool to my advantage. Another example is weathering. Yeah.
And what kind of sandpaper do you use? Or like the metric that tells you how bumpy the sandpaper is?
Oh, you mean when I hand sand?
No, I mean with the Dremel.
With the Dremel.
Like different. You know, I don't know the English word, but
yeah, the grid, the sandpaper grid. You'll see it in the next slide because I have a tip for it. Because the secret is actually the grid on foam with the Dremel doesn't matter. Surprising. It really doesn't matter because what you actually want to use is a worn out sanding drum. You don't want the new one because the new one is too hard. Even if you get a higher grit, it's still too hard for foam. You get like these fuzzy things, but you will see in the next slide.
Yeah, I think.
Another effect is like weathering. Now weathering is just going to town on your foam, like just take your Dremel going to town. But please do think like where you would get hit if you wear the armor, because there's this very popular thing to add like these crosses. They look cool, like a slash like this and then another slash in the other direction. But if you think about it, if you want to have like a realistic armor, it doesn't make any sense sometimes. Like they put a cross everywhere. Like it would be very rare to have like two slashes from like, especially like the opposite directions, like multiple times. So you can go to down, but think about like if you put a sword, you would do like this. Look where the damage will be and add your damage there. And like I said, you can change your head to get all kinds of different textures. Why this is better than like using the rocks and heating your foam because this foam will always have this texture. The texture will never go away. And again, you have thousands of heads which have thousands of different like effects. So it's just trying out which one is best for your armor prop. And this one is a very old one, but I always include it as well. If you want to make a rivet, like a rivet that goes into the foam, you can just use your sanding drum, press it into it, and if it has some lines to have a screwdriver, you can just add those lines. And again, like when you heat it up with a heat gun, the lines will go even more open and even more smooth. And the last thing about Dremel is carving. Like I said, when you go in the direction to carve, you can go really fast, really fast. And the Dremel is amazing to carve. It's very hard to see, it's very dark on the picture. But before the Dremel, you see how the lines are like this. And if you want to carve with a knife, you could, but it's very hard. Just use a Dremel, it doesn't take that long. It will make a lot of dust, so wear your respirator. But it's very fast. And the trick to get back to you is which grit, it doesn't matter. Just pre-wear your sanding drum. How you can pre-wear it is just take some wood and just sand until the sanding drum becomes like that. Why? Because the grit of any sandpaper that turns so fast is too strong from foam. Because foam is very squishy. Like when you will try my samples downstairs, you will see how squishy, like how foam feels. It's not like wood. So pre-wear it and you will see, when you do that, you will have like very, very smooth lines. Some people even use like those stone sanding drums. Because the stone sanding drums, how funny it sounds, they are a lot less harsh on foam than like sandpaper sanding drums. Okay, like in a few minutes I will give you all some foam clay so you can play around with it, build something, like having fun with it. But first I do want to say what is foam clay, because I was talking about foam and now it's like clay. Like how a plate of foam, how is it clay? Well, it's a pretty new product. Like it's only been on the market for a year. It was before as well, but those were those Chinese foamy things. It's very cheap and it dries like normal foam. Again, you can touch a sample downstairs. When it's like a clay, and when it dries, it will become like solid foam. It works like normal clay, so if you know how to sculpt already, you can work with it as well. There are some differences, but if you already have the logic of sculpting, and sculpting, learning how to sculpt, like it's pretty easy for armor, because you don't make like big humanic sculpts or something. No, it's always like some details you sculpt. It's perfect for detailing. If you have a gap, you can just add it in there. It sticks without glue, so you don't need any glue. You can just press it onto the foam and it will stick. And it can be used in molds as well. So if you have a mold and you don't want to resin cast something because it's too heavy and too annoying, you can just push foam clay into the mold. And now the funny part, you have to stick it in the freezer, because if you don't stick it in the freezer, it will shrink too much. Because foam clay has a tendency to shrink a little bit. And although it's a very, very good material, very innovative, and I use it a lot, there are disadvantages as well. Like it cures pretty slow, like 24 to 48 hours. And you do have to respect that time. Like it's not something you can do like the night before the convention. You really have to think like a few days in front. Because there was once this girl and she had a beautiful, beautiful sword made from foam clay. And the outside was like very stiff and was very dry. And she took the sword to the convention, she painted it and everything seemed fine. And like at a moment in the convention, the sword did literally like this. Because although the outside was dry, the inside was still soft. And because of the heat at the convention, the sword became a little bit weaker on the outside and the inside was still soft, so it just bends. And it cracks when you don't cure it properly, but normally it shouldn't crack. It's if you put your foam clay like in the sun, which I wouldn't advise of course. And also watch out with the heat gun. Like the heat gun is great, but it's not the best friend of foam clay. Like you can heat it up, but not too much, because if you stay too long at one spot, it might crack. Like I said, like it's very sensitive to heat. But I'm not talking about like 50 degrees. I'm talking way higher, like 80 degrees, 90 degrees, like the point where Worbla becomes soft as well. Like, so from holding it or taking it to convention, it won't crack or melt or anything, unless it's not cured yet. Alright, so I will give you all like a little sample package of foam clay. I don't know if I have enough sample packages, but I also have like a bigger bag of foam clay. So the ones who get like from the bigger bag, it's the same foam clay, it's just not in like a little pot. But I have some plastic wrap. If you want to keep it fresh to use it at home as well, you can come to me and I will like wrap it into the foil. I will continue with the slides, but you can still play with it. It's because I don't have a lot of time after this because I have to prejudge. So I will talk in the meantime. You can still play with it. I will continue my rumbling. But there's another part that I want to talk about now, the last one. And it's my secret on how I paint my armor. Because even though if you have like a very beautifully crafted armor and you paint it really like bad, then your armor will look like a bit shitty, which is not what you want. You want to use the talent and the work you've put into making your armor to finish it. So I like shiny things, as you know. It's quite different from the costume from yesterday, but I love to paint armors that shine. And the first thing, if you want to have like a very good looking armor, is cleaning up. It only takes like, depending on the armor, but it doesn't take long. Like it takes a few minutes per armor piece. But the problem is like, it's the end of the build, you're tired, you're already like bored from looking at the same piece of armor like for so long, so you're like, I just want to paint it. No, first clean up please. You can use the foam clay I gave you, or Quickseal. Quickseal is like a kind of silicone caulking. It's like used in bathrooms. Again, make sure all your details are done, because after you paint, you can't really add any 3D details anymore. And heat seal everything, which means just going over everything with a heat gun. It's like I said, it fills gaps. And don't forget to sand all the edges. Even the edges that look like pretty good to you, like give them a little sanding. Especially like if you have like very elegant armor, like sand the borders like a little bit round. Instead of having like this, it's better to have like a little curve, to say. For example, and again it's very hard to see on the screen, my apologies, but you see the one where it's just sanded, you see that like a little line passing. Like it's very hard to see, but when you paint it, you will definitely see it. So take the time to just go with a heat gun over that edge. Like that edge will just like, it will smooth itself out. And again, if your foam is still fuzzy, you know, you see all those little things at the foam, you will get it a lot. You can avoid it by using, like I said, a 1-arc sanding drum on a Dremel. But if you use a normal one, or for some other reason you have this fuzz, you can just go over with a little bit of sandpaper. Like, take the highest grit you have, it doesn't matter that much. Wet sand it, that you will see, it will become very smooth. And just to show you an example, like a curve made with a seam. Like if you need to make a seam, because sometimes you will have to, especially for shoulder blades or something, or for helmets, use a Quickseal or the foam clay, and just smear it over the seam. And when you're done smearing it over, remove all the excess. So it's like a very like smooth surface. And when you paint that, you will see. You see the seam is almost gone. Like only when light is directly on it, you see a very thin line, but no one will ever see that in real life. So that's just to point out, like a little bit of finishing, like a little bit of cleanup will get you this far. Now, my secret. Well, it's not my secret, but what I do, I use a spray gun. And a spray gun is a bit of heavy equipment. You can compare it with an airbrush, but a lot bigger. It's my best purchase ever, because with this I spare so much money. It's basically unlimited spray paint. You add paint on top into the little thing, or on the bottom, it depends which one you have. And then you press the trigger and paint will spray out with a really big force, not like an airbrush, but like very strongly. They use it to paint cars, for example. And it leaves no brush marks. And it can spray like all kinds of liquids, even latex and everything, flexible paints. But the problem is it needs a compressor though. And I'm not talking about those little compressors, I talk about like a real big compressor. And those can cost around 100 euros, I would say, for a decent compressor. It depends which one you get, but if you buy one specifically for that, you don't need like a 300 compressor, or 100 will definitely do. But it's the return of the investment. Like you spend money, but you will save so much money later. You will see why and how. For example, this is just one layer of gold. No priming, no anything, just one layer of gold. And it's acrylic paint. Those cheap acrylic paints you can find anywhere. How insane is that? If you want to do that with like spray paints or with hand, you need multiple layers because gold is a pain in the ass. And in general it will take so much time. Well, this, you just take the spray gun. I use Flexbond in it as well. I will talk about what Flexbond is. But I take the paint gun, put Flexbond, put very cheap acrylic paints in it, put water in it, mix it, spray, and it's literally just shh, and you're done. Like there's not a lot of skills involved with that. And look at the shine you get just from one layer. Of course I did multiple layers because this armor was supposed to travel countries and fuck. Anyway, thank you for telling me. I will hurry a bit up. So yeah, there's a shine just from one layer. Of course, I did multiple layers because this armor was supposed to travel from country to country to country to country. So the more layers, the stronger your paint will be, obviously. Then I did some finishing work on it to make it look a bit more interesting. And I think this is very amazing, I think. Like, look at that shine of that gold. Like, try to do that with a brush. Like, and it took me no skills to do that. Like, I can give a child a spray gun, and I hope they don't spray on themselves, but you can give a child a spray gun and you get that effect. That's insane. But of course, you have to buy the compressor and the spray gun. Okay, so I talked about Flexbond, but what is Flexbond? Like, some of you might have heard of Plastidip, and I used to be a big fan of Plastidip. But the problem with Plastidip is it's so expensive, and it's so toxic and smelly, and it's a pain to use. Whereas Flexbond is non-toxic, it's fully flexible, so you can keep bending your foam. It's amazingly strong as well. Not only does it prime your surface, it also like hardens it a little bit while still being like flexible. Like that's very nice, because my armor in my suitcase, like there are things bumping on top of it the whole time. With Flexbond, there was no damage on it. Well, with Plastidip, it gets damaged because Plastidip is a very thin layer. Then also it's self-leveling, and this is very important with the spray gun as well. Because if you spray too much at one place, you will get these ugly drips. But Flexbond, it levels itself out. And it dries in 30 minutes, and it's cheap. And again, I use the spray gun to paint with it. now I have a little question for you. First of all, how much did the paint cost for all the golden parts of this armor? And second of all, like how much time did it take to paint the gold? Now, the time, I put the real time on there and I calculate all my procrastination as well, because you know, you paint a layer of paint and you are like, you need to wait for it to dry, and it takes 30 minutes. 30 minutes is perfect to watch an episode of some series, right? But what happens, you watch one episode, then you say, oh, I'll watch another one, and another one, and another one, and you forget to put more layers. So, take a guess, how much did the paint cost? Do you think?
You buy color.
Yeah, the whole armor, like the paint.
But where you buy the acrylic color?
Yeah, but acrylic. I use the spray gun and
In shop, your shop on AliExpress.
oh no, I just use a cheap acrylic paint. Like. But of course you have to calculate, like I use multiple layers, I use the Flexbond as well, but how much do you think this has cost me in euros to paint?
40 euros.
40?
100.
50? 100? These are reasonable prices. I mean, if you use plastic dip, you would be already like way higher. If you use spray paints, because you need multiple cans. But I will show you the answer soon. How much time do you think it took? A week? 2 weeks. Well, I'll show you the answer. First of all, it cost me 30 euros. I just bought like 2 of these pots of acrylic paints. You know those Amsterdam paints, like yeah, those huge pots, and they are very cheap, like. And I also bought some Flexbond, and water is free, so you mix everything together. And why it is so fast? Because you literally just have to done. Of course, yeah, you have to do the backside as well and everything, and the insides and stuff. But it took 2 days, even with procrastination. Like that's insane. In the past, you need like 2 weeks to paint a whole armor. And you have the rattle cans that you like. I just want to say, like, it's a thing that like we cosplay stole from the auto industry, but it's a thing that works very well. And if you have the chance to ever get it, or even if you really want to make armors and you want to step up your game, I would advise you just try it. You will see.
So only heat sealing and then plastic dip and color in one step. Done.
Yeah, exactly. It's everything in one. Like it's like the Flexbond is a primer, but Flexbond is transparent. So when you add the golds, it gives the color. Like you use the acrylic just purely to color the Flexbond. You could use dyes as well, of course, but those are more expensive. So it's like it's sealing, it's priming, and it's painting in one go. Of course, I would advise to use multiple layers if you wear it a lot. But if you just like really fast, like the prop I showed, like with the shine, that's like in 5 minutes painting, because you don't have to shade anything. And now for the last slide. I made it in time. Repairing your costume. Because no matter what you will do, it will always get this damage. This damage will always come back. It's like these cracks. But if you use the method I told you, and if you use flexible paints, then you can repair them easily, because it's not the paint that's cracked, it's the foam underneath that's like cracked. So again, we will take the heat gun, go over it, and the foam will like even itself out again, and the paint will follow, because it's flexible paint, it can stretch out. So because a lot of people panic, they're like, oh shit, I have cracks in my paint and everything. Well, if you use a rattle can, yes, it's cracks and you can't really fix it. But if you use flexible paints, then you spray with a spray gun, or even with a brush, if it's flexible, then you can just use a heat gun to fix it. I mean, that's insane. Like, you don't have to throw your armor away. Yay. Okay, so thank you very much for coming to my panel and for your attention. I hope you learned some tricks and you're excited to make some new things or try some things. If you have any questions, you can contact me on Instagram, Facebook, whatever. Oh, that's a different convention, sorry. Or by email even. But if you want to directly ask me, I will be downstairs.